I want to start with Apple here. So something that caught my eye, Cory, was a 36% jump in R&D spending year on year.
Yeah.
That's an incredible number. What's cooking?
Yeah, you know, I was updating my model and I punched in $1.6 billion in spending in research and development, and it was a shocking number. And you know, it's a huge amount of spending, and one might ask, you know, what are they getting for that? What great new devices have we seen from Apple, a company that's spending, you know, $6 billion a year on R&D? It's a fairly incredible number, and that doesn't include capital expenditures, acquisitions, and so on. But then when you compare that to Microsoft, which is spending over $3 billion in the same quarter from the results we saw last night, that's what it takes to sort of have stakes in this game of inventing things in technology right now and trying to come up with products like iPads, Surfaces, watches. You know, who knows what's next? We expect a new iPhone in the current quarter right now from Apple, but obviously spending vast amounts of money to make that stuff happen.
But we've heard about the iPhone 6, right, Sam? We've heard about a potential iWatch or iTime. I read that today. That could be a possible name, right? So is it all just that, or is there something else going on here behind products development? Because this is the kind of spending that we saw before the iPhone first came out.
I think with Apple, there are two kinds of spending. There's the spending on potential new product lines, and we certainly hear a lot about that, and we talk a lot about that. But there's also the underlying infrastructure that powers all of these devices and services. Things like iBeacon, which Apple has been slowly rolling out in iPhones and is going to potentially have a big change in retailing and location-based services.
And that's where I'm in a store and it can show me where the sales are or something based on what I want to buy.
Exactly. That is not something that necessarily has the big splash of a new phone or an entire new category, but it does have the potential to really bolster the existing businesses and offer new services and features to consumers.
You know, Cory, we had David Kirkpatrick on earlier in the 8 o'clock hour, and he said that Microsoft is actually a better growth story right now than Apple. Do you agree with that?
I hate to actually, I love to disagree with David Kirkpatrick. You know, I don't know. I mean, we don't know what kind of products. The thing about Microsoft is a battleship, and the way the business model works with the recognition of deferred revenues, you know, we can kind of see what's happening over quite a long term there. You know, I think the Surface is a fascinating device that they talked about over $400 million in sales in the last quarter for the Surface. I think that there are really interesting things going on in the cloud with Microsoft. There's some dispute that. And I think that we'll see that sort of roll out over time. But, you know, to Sam's point, I mean, the ecosystem of Apple, I mean, you could look at the Macintosh business and look at the huge growth they've seen in that business in the last 3 quarters and see a big growth story there. So, you know, and there's that open question of what new things will drop from Apple. What I will say is that if the iPad were to come into existence this year as it did 3 years ago, the size of that business would be so much smaller compared to the rest of Apple right now that it would be just a drop in the bucket. So whatever a new device might be to Apple, it might not show up so much in the results because Apple's just so huge right now.
Well, I'm talking about, you know, tablets, phablets, the whole thing. It leads us to our other story of the morning, which is a tech leadership at Samsung. In South Korea, Samsung's chairman enters his 3rd month of hospitalization following a heart attack as his family risks losing its grip on the conglomerate. Sam, you've been doing a lot of work sort of in this company, what this means. Explain to us the hierarchy and how important the Lee family is.
Sure. So the Lee family controls the Samsung Group, which is the conglomerate that includes, most importantly, Samsung Electronics, but also dozens, if not hundreds, of other companies that permeate all of daily life in Korea. Chairman Lee is an older gentleman. He is currently in the hospital, and we can say with absolute certainty that at some point he will die. We don't know whether it'll be sooner or later, and then power will pass to his son, J.Y. Lee, but that will come with some very big repercussions.
Oh, and also we should point out they only own about 2% of the total stock, but they have like 50% of the control.
There's
so
this
it's
very
a very huge, complex organization.
There's this very complicated ownership structure in which the Lee family controls a little bit of one part of the company, which in turn has cross holdings throughout the rest of the company, and really the entire company is owned by a theme park. That Everland, which is now called the Chail Group, is a Samsung theme park right next to its executive training facility, and that actually officially owns the entire Samsung Group.
Fascinating. All right, thanks so much. Bloomberg Businessweek's Sam Grobart. Also, editor-at-large Cory Johnson.